I think there's a way to find deals always if you pursue them the right way.
And a lot of it comes down to that. It's just the consistency, like showing up every day, trying to get better every single day, having a plan, system structure, following it.
I feel like anytime I've bought a home, it feels expensive. Everyone's like, it's really expensive right now. Are you sure you want to buy? Typically continues to get more expensive.
Hey friends, today we are in the studio with Shane McCain with Blue Edge Professional Real Estate. He's the founder. And I was introduced to this guy from a good friend of mine, Travis. Shout out to you, Travis. And he was like, hey, listen, I just met this guy at the gym. Seems like a nice guy, young gun, going after the world, you know, building his business, Christian guy. His office is right down the road from you. And you guys have so much stuff in common. You got to meet him. So I ended up meeting him, and he's just such an awesome guy. And I wanted to have him in today because I think he's just a great example of somebody who's just going after his goals and going after it. And I love his story, and we're going to get into that here in a second. So Shane, welcome to the studio.
I appreciate you having me, man. I admire you. I love getting to be around people like yourself and Travis. My joke about Travis is he's like threatened to beat me up if I wouldn't be his friend. So he's a big dude.
He's a big boy, former Golden Gloves boxer. So yeah, you don't want to mess with Travis. I held pads for him a few times, and it was not fun. So, but thanks for coming in. Today we're going to be talking a lot about the development world, real estate in regards to developers, investors. We're going to talk a little bit about mortgage rates, affordability, cost of waiting, all that good stuff. Before we get into that, Shane, tell me about your story, because what I love about your story is that you come from a small town and you go to the pros and then you get right into business. And I just love how you compress your time, where most people, it would take them a certain amount of years. You have kind of compressed it. I think a lot of people could learn from that. But start us out and tell us your story.
Yeah, as you said, I was in professional baseball and got released about the same time I was ready to walk away. And for me, it was almost exciting to be like, well, you know, I've done this one thing. I've thrown baseballs or played baseball since I could remember. And now I get the chance to pursue other things in the world. And business was always something I had a love for. Even when I was in college, like I never really got the chance to like focus on business because I was always playing sports. So I love that you made that point about time. Like that's how I looked at it, and I very much measured time. Like when I got out, I felt like it was very important for me to catch up. It was almost like an anxious feeling, honestly, at first. It was like, I'm in the workforce now with people who I feel like are a lot smarter than me, more established. So I wanted to engulf myself into real estate through, I was, selling during the day. At night, I was working on properties that I bought with podcasts in my ears while I was working on them. And like, I wanted to get as many reps as early and make as many mistakes in a way as possible, because I was kind of in that window of time where I could take risks and make mistakes, and then now things change, I think, when you want to start a family and things like that. But during that window of time, yeah, that's kind of how I started. And
who'd you play for, baseball?
I was in the Texas Rangers organization. I wouldn't say I played for the Rangers. I was kind of working my way up into the AA system and did some, played in some big league spring training games. But what an industry.
Super competitive, right?
Yeah. And seeing those guys, I learned so much from being around like people at that level.
What do you, being around people at that level, what do you see that separates the top guys from the average guys?
Consistency and grit. I mean, these guys have a plan and they show up every single day the same way. I remember seeing like Cole Hamels was one of the best examples of like, I'd watch him pitch and he wouldn't do that well in spring training. He'd give up, he'd face whoever and give up 5-6 runs in 2 or 3 innings. And for me, like, that was deflating. But he just knew who he was, and he'd show up the next day and do the exact same thing. And then the next day, and he's just very consistent, a true professional.
Consistency. Isn't it funny how, like, that's so true with everything, not just sports. Like in business, like I think about even like in our business too, like what separates like the top mortgage professionals from an average, difference between maybe somebody who closes like 2 deals a month versus like 20. And a lot of it comes down to that. It's just the consistency, like showing up every day, trying to get better every single day, having a plan, system structure, following it, and executing.
Right.
And people who execute quicker typically get quicker results.
Right. Have you ever seen an Eisenhower matrix? It's like the urgent and important, that box. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but that's what I found. Like there's one box that they tell you to focus on that's like being proactive, and that's things that are not urgent but important.
Yep.
Which is like buying a house maybe, or that class that you want to take, or that sales call that's like, you don't have to do this, but it's important. Like these guys are just consistently doing that stuff every single day.
Yep. And so what eventually made you hang up the glove and move on?
Let's see. It was a combination of things, really. I was getting to the point where I wasn't like a big name, undrafted free agent. So I was kind of looking at my career realistically. Like, okay, I might be able to sign another contract and play for another team for a year. And they're running a business too. So like the guy behind me, they invested a couple $1 million in. So you could play great and play to the best of your abilities and lose your job. And I just didn't want that type of lifestyle where I felt like I was outsourcing a lot of the potential of my success to someone else. So that was a big reason I was just ready to get into business and start like controlling my own destiny a little bit more.
Yep.
And like that's nothing bad about the game. Like I still love baseball. I don't watch it as much anymore. Maybe one day I'll like get back into helping and being a part of it. But there's a lot to love about business and affecting people's like daily lives, and I'm very happy with the transition.
Nice. And so you transition out of that, and you go and work for a developer. Was that your first kind of entry into the real estate?
I was like off of pitcher's mound and into online sales. I had like a headset on, and I'm talking to people who are trying to find new construction communities, talking to them about HOAs and where they live, and it was humbling for me. I think that was part of my motivation of like I gotta learn how to be good at this stuff fast. But yeah, that was my first role, and then after a little bit, I got promoted into new home sales, where I got to sell townhomes, and by this time I started, like I said, I was reading a lot about wealth building and finance, and that was a great position for me because I was talking to people who were renting, and a lot of them didn't have like financial plans, and that they didn't really carve out strategies of how they were going to build wealth. So it was fun to sit with them and talk with them about that.
And then take me through, like you ended up starting your own company, but kind of take me through that process of starting your own company. Why did you start your own company instead of just going to work for another real estate company?
I was just telling Adrian before, it was kind of like, I think God played a big hand in it. I left Pulte in an effort to help my mom and my family's company. And it went in the wrong direction for different reasons, between something that I wasn't involved in. And my partners got in a big tiff and went in different directions, and I was like, holy crap, now I'm working at my family's company in my hometown. Like, how did I end up here? And that same day, Pulte, my old employer, the president called me literally the same day. And he's like, hey, I'm thinking I might have an opportunity for you. We want to get deeper into like St. Lucie County, Martin County with land acquisition. I think you'd be great at finding deals and sourcing deals for us. I didn't want to sound too desperate. I was like, yeah, like when can I start? So originally I was thinking about working for myself. And then when I got into general real estate, when I was with Pulte, they have like very high level salespeople that are training, and they're like top of the line, and they get paid well. And then when I got into general, I started realizing it's kind of like you don't really know what you're going to get in the everyday agent. It's all over the map, and that could be because of the low barrier to entry, just to get your real estate license. And I thought, what if we just started a company that was raising the standard a little bit, putting more effort into treating people the right way and taking care of their finances, and being like, the guys I watched your last podcast, being like those guys, and kind of raising the bar for real estate. And that's how we started it. And it was in my dining room, and we've been growing ever since. Now we got our office. So.
Nice. Well,
yeah.
Congratulations on that. When you talk about raising the standards, like what does that mean to you? Like what standards?
Well, I would start first and foremost from like a sales standpoint of just being, and we were talking about Dave Shea from FKA. Dave Shea taught me, he was my boss at Pulte, about being like genuinely curious and getting to know people. And from a sales standpoint, that is just so important. To like, I think in sales we have it might be like a nervous trend to walk in and like feature dump and tell everyone about what we're offering or things like that. But getting to learn what people want, and then like getting on their side, and then just understanding that more often, and then doing the same thing to the other side, the person that you're negotiating against. Like, I want to truly understand and make that person feel heard and what they're trying to achieve, so I can create a win-win scenario between the two parties. You know what I mean?
100%. I'm on the same page. I love that, and I love how you see that so early in your career. The best negotiators are the ones that come on the other side of the table with that person. Like, hey, we're on the same team. And they negotiate on that same side instead of one against the other. And I love what you say about curiosity and asking questions. I think it's funny because this is my new trend. I take my kids to school, and so we do gratitude every morning. And I try to add like a little something each day to get them to think. And my mentor, his name is Rick Ruby. He's a big mortgage coach. And I asked him the other day, I was like, Rick, what makes you so successful? And he's like, there's two things that make me more successful than anybody else. And his net worth's over $100 million. I was like, well, what are those two things? He's like, number one, I'm more generous than anybody else I know. He gives away a ton of money, not just money, time, resources, etc. He said, number two is that I ask more questions than anybody else I know. He goes, really? I'm always curious, and I'm always asking questions.
Yeah.
And so in the morning, I'm like, that's good. So every morning, I was like, guys, what questions are you going to ask today? How many questions did you ask today? What did you ask? But when it comes to sales, it's the same thing. It's like asking the right questions and be genuinely curious about the other person, like really digging in.
And that's energizing, right? I mean, you can apply that to books or fitness or faith. Like being genuinely curious is like just a fun way to live life.
That's awesome. So you got the company Blvd Professional, and then you guys kind of focus on, from my understanding, two tiers. You have your general real estate with general buy side, list side real estate transactions. Then you also have more of kind of your commercial side, working with developers.
Right.
Tell me a little bit more about that side of it.
Well, I'm in a unique position where I'm Pulte's exclusive consultant. So any opportunities that I find, I bring straight to them. If they were to turn down those deals, then I can bring them to other people. I don't do that much, just because I don't know. I think deals come back around, and I like working for one person, really. Yep. Just easier for me. And then, yeah, we have a couple other guys that are in land, and we're just trying to form a relationship with people in land and landowners, kind of like a long-term relationship, instead of, I don't like calling people and being like, hey, I got a buyer. I want to call someone who owns land and ask them out to coffee or lunch, and like get to know them, genuinely curious about their story, which is always interesting. Like these old-time landowners, and how this land was passed down through the family and what they did on the land. And I think that's a better approach for people who are younger in real estate to establish those long-term relationships, you know.
So when talking about these landowners, so yeah, it's pretty interesting when you're dealing with those guys. So what's important to a landowner when they're getting to that point where they're looking to potentially sell it to a developer like a Pulte or somebody else? Like what's important to that person at that moment? Is it just price?
Well, you know, a lot of them, they can be great negotiators because they have other land that they've sold, and they're not in a rush.
Right. So they use time as part of their negotiating strategy.
Right. So a lot of the negotiations come down to that, which is the perfect seller for like a big developer, is maybe getting something with a long tail where they can do like multiple takedowns, and it could be better for their velocity of money, instead of buying all 500 acres and putting that type of money in. Finding a patient landowner who will do like a longer takedown structure. But that's a good question. I mean, yeah, it is mostly getting the highest dollar, and they'll pursue a lot of opportunities because they have the time.
Right.
They want to see, like, this developer thinks they can get this approved, and they might be more aggressive. So we try to like do a good job educating them on what's realistic and what we've seen, and working with the municipalities, and that's been how we're most effective.
When you're negotiating a land deal, and I'm just generally curious about this, is like, so like as a developer, so let's just say a guy has 50 acres, and I'm like, wow, man, I can put a development, and I can put 70 lots on that with my estimation. But you really don't know until you get your site plan approved, right, through the city or the county. So like on these deals, do you do like a really long contingency period, so that way you can basically get like at least a preliminary site plan somewhat approved to make sure that you can even get this many lots on the land? Because if it's only 20 lots, the price might not sketch out to where you need it to be.
Right.
Like what does that whole process look like when you're negotiating development deals?
That's probably the biggest objection I get, is like, why can't you just close on it in 90 days? Why can't you just, like, that's how my grandpa bought it. And how I get around that is like, look, we're going to do a lot of the work here for you in the next 12 months. We're going to be on your team, and we're going to go work with the municipality and see how much we can get done. So they get a lot for just kind of sitting on the sidelines. Like, we're going to go do all the environmental testing, see what's actually possible here. And then if the developer walks away from the deal, a lot of times they get all of this work that's hundreds of thousands. It's a lot of time and effort, and it's hard work.
Right. So they have all the surveys, they have all the environmental testing, they probably have site plans, they have maybe some initial approvals.
Right.
And then they would, so if they walk away from the deal, that's the upside to the developer. Downside is it's a long close.
Right. So I'm usually trying to, get on their team about that, of like, look, I know you want the quick close, but let's fast forward, like in 10 months, what position are you going to be in if we were to walk away?
Right.
Which the developers that I work with aren't in the business of walking away. Like they want to close, and they often do.
Right.
But you're usually in a better position, and you can resell it and then for more value.
Interesting. So usually those closes are like a 1-year close on those, or longer?
Oh, longer. Yeah, longer. Yeah.
Wow.
I've had...
it's a long sales cycle.
Dude, you're telling me. It was tough when I first got in it. I got like 5 or 6 deals under contract, like when COVID was just every deal worked, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a genius. And when the interest rates spiked so quickly, everything changed. Like renegotiated them, didn't work, and yeah.
So what is like in the Treasure Coast? So if we're looking at like St. Lucie, Martin counties, like what is the, like what's the developer appetite right now up there? Are they actively looking for land, more developments? Is there a big appetite? Has it slowed down? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of like the developers that can do something affordable are
right.
Still churning and burning, especially in St. Lucie County. Martin County, yeah, same appetite for when you can get something done, because, I mean, we've seen the wealth that's moved here over the past few years, and a lot of people came down and they're going to rent for a year or two and then try to find something. So the builders still make sense. Like a lot of their deals make sense when you're comparing it, the way they're selling compared to someone in the resale market. Like it's better insurance wise. They're able to negotiate rates a little bit more. Like they're doing flexible type financing and
Yep.
things of that nature. So yeah, I would say they're very gun ho on those areas.
And are there still a lot of like land opportunities out there in the Treasure Coast?
Yeah.
I know west of 95, there's a ton of, ranch land, farmland out there that, really hasn't been touched yet.
Right.
And then going out even closer to, going out west more, closer to like Indiantown, Okeechobee, those areas. But what do you see in as far as the opportunities for development?
Our location's like pretty predictable, right? Because over here you got wetlands and the Everglades, and over here you have the ocean. So it's not like Dallas or Orlando that just like keeps going out in circles. It continues to move up the coast. What I love about like Jupiter, Palm Beach Gardens, Martin County, is they do a great job of, controlling parking and green space.
Right.
And that's great for the homeowners there. School zones are great. Like that type of scarcity and quality is going to be great for the value long term.
Yep.
And then, yeah, as you move to like St. Lucie County, they get a little more like pro development, and which is good to have that mix of affordability in our market. That's really important for people in this area.
Well, talking about that, the whole affordability. I was reading some news earlier. Wall Street Journal, the Housing Affordability Index. So this is the index of like whether a typical family earns enough to qualify for a mortgage on a median price home. So it seems pretty simple, but it's an index they've been tracking for 50 years, and it literally has been falling off a cliff over the last year. So the index is at the lowest level since 1985, meaning since 1985, it's now the hardest to get a mortgage and to qualify for a typical median house.
Wow.
And so if you look at like the average, I think house today is around 440,000. But if we rewind back to 1985, like the average house was 85,000. Eggs back then was $1. Today's equivalent $2.39. So you can kind of see where that's going, because now it's like over $3. Gas, it was $1.13. Today's equivalent would be $2, and we know where gas is. So things are just getting like more and more expensive. And you know what I think about this is that this is the hardest piece of living in South Florida is the affordability. And for like Palm Beach County, there's really not a lot. When you're looking for affordable stuff, you're probably going to be like in a condo, and then you're dealing with all the condo issues. You know, the lack of reserves and the high risk factors condo associations have versus like a single family house. So a lot of people are going north to Port St. Lucie, Fort Pierce, and then they're commuting an hour for work. So it's becoming harder and harder. What are you seeing out there for housing affordability? Are you seeing any new developments like come online that are affordable? Because it seems like over the last few years, like all these developers, they're all building, 700 to 1.5. And the interesting thing is that those developments right now are sitting with an inventory. But you're not seeing a lot of these developments come online with affordable homes, probably because the developer can't make the numbers work.
Right.
What are you seeing out there when it comes to affordable housing?
It's a problem. I mean, I have two thoughts on it. I'm curious what you think about it. Because I feel like anytime I've bought a home, it feels expensive for everyone at every time.
Pretty much, yeah.
Everyone's like, it's really expensive right now. Are you sure you want to buy?
Yep.
Oh, yeah. And it typically continues to get more expensive. Like that's how real estate's trended for years. But yeah, to your point, I've looked at deals myself where it's like for the developer to make on an affordable $400,000 house, it's like sometimes like we got to get the land for free because the developer's costs have gone up too. So it is something that they're actively like strategizing and working for is like how affordable can we make these? And I've seen like 3D printing is one solution that people are talking of that I'm not super educated on, that I think it looks interesting, what I've seen of it. But it's the same case in multifamily. Like I know a lot of those multifamily syndicators are not doing well in the last year or so on deals where I think they've kind of lost their tail to their investors. But
it seems like there should be some sort of I don't know, some sort of community partnership with developers to work on affordable housing. I know people always talk the talk, but it never happens. Whether that's donating or subsidizing maybe some land or doing some tax benefit type stuff for developers to really incentivize these developers to start building affordable housing, because it is a problem, because your average salaried worker, they need a place to live. And if they're going to be stuck in the rent trap, that means they're never going to be building wealth.
Yeah.
That means they're going to be stuck there. And you and I both know the number one way to build wealth is through real estate.
Right. Yeah.
Everybody just needs their shot. I think one thing too is rates are starting to come down. So we've seen rates come down from a 7.5 to a 6.5.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's helping with affordability. On a $500,000 house, if that was your qualification max at a 7.5, now you could go up to $550 with the same payment. So as rates come down, people will qualify for more mortgage. So that is going to help a little bit, but it's just a little speck in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what are your thoughts on the government helping with funding for down payments and assistance like that?
I mean, I think there's some. When we just had the Hometown Heroes program, which is a state program, Governor DeSantis signed it into law last year. So every July it gets funded with about $100 million, and that's to promote first-time homeownership for Florida residents. So the way that program works is that you have to work for a Florida-based employer, meaning they have to have an office here. You have to be a first-time homebuyer, meaning you haven't owned a home in the last 3 years. And then there's other qualifications you have to meet. And basically what they do is they give you a bond. So it's not free money, but they'll give you the money for the down payment. But but it'll get filed on the property as like a second mortgage, a silent second, no interest, no fees, no nothing. But whenever you sell the house, or if you decide to rent it or move out or refinance, you got to pay it back. So what it does is it bridges the gap and allows, sometimes the biggest hurdle for people getting into their first house is down payment. Mm-hmm. Like that's the biggest hurdle. It's like, oh, well, I have to come up with 3.5% down, but then we have closing costs and the appraisal and all this other stuff that I have to pay for, and I just can't swing it.
Yeah.
But if we could take that barrier away, I don't know how many clients we helped with Hometown here is out of money now. It runs out usually within 60 days. But we've probably put a good 30 people through that program this year. And, the people that always come to mind are like, we had a female Palm Beach County sheriff, and her biggest issue has been down payment. And we ended up getting her into a house out in Loxahatchee, like a $500,000 house with like $3,000 out of her pocket total. I mean, it was incredible.
That's awesome.
And, it's just so cool to see. We put her in last year. That house now, since she's fixed it up, is now over $600,000, like in a year. So literally she put $3,000 in the deal. So she invested $3,000 and made about $100,000 in equity already. Obviously she put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into fixing it up, but that's how you create wealth. Mm-hmm. It's beautiful. So I agree with programs like that. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit more about, let's stay on this development topic just for a second too, and talk more about like responsible development. So obviously the pushback, it's always like the pushback, right? Where it's like, we don't want development, but then we need development. It's like, we need housing, but we don't want it because we love nature. So, what are your thoughts in regards to like responsible development?
Yeah, because it is, every project we do, people come out with that opinion, obviously. And it's a tough debate because we do want to take care of the environment. We live in the most beautiful place ever. And I try to, I've gotten to sell in these new communities, and seeing what that does, as you're talking about, makes me very biased towards like, this is a good thing because we're providing that affordability by like, obviously supply and demand, creating more supply. And you get to see families like raise their children and make friends and build community, and get it at an affordable price because there's more of it. Yep. So then there's like some scenarios, and this might be a hot take, where like storage facilities or car washes or things like that, that I know print money, and I have friends that have invested in these deals, but it's kind of like, what does that bring to our society, or is that needed? And you saw the Jonathan Dickinson Park project. That was interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
How that shook out.
A lot of people in uproar about that, and that's been
right.
Kiboshed. Right now, there's a lot more work to do on it and finding out exactly what happened. But yeah, they're trying to develop part of Jonathan Dickinson State Park, which is like a crown jewel of South Florida,
right?
Of the state,
yeah.
Really.
I've scanned over maps. I don't even take a second look at places like that. But I know some people in the golf world that are like, hey, we needed golf. Or
we need another golf course, really? Come on. Seriously?
Have you seen what they're doing out in Hope Sound?
I don't think I know one person that was for that. I don't think there's one person in this community that was for that. No. It was crazy. I'm friends with Congressman Mass. He's been on the podcast before. Great guy, but he's like super vocal. When that first surfaced, Mass wrote a letter to DeSantis, and he was just like, listen, guys, they were having this like open meeting to discuss it. And there's all these board members that are the voting people that decide if this project's going to go through. They weren't even going to be at the meeting. They were sending like a subject matter expert to the meeting. Mm-hmm. So Brian's like, the people that are voting aren't even going to come to the meeting to hear from the community. It's like, this is absurd.
That's wild.
But it was really cool to see not just congressmen, but all of our state representatives. Like everybody was involved, from mayors to business leaders to like everybody. And it was just so cool to see the whole community come around that project and really put so much pressure to get the developer to withdraw the application.
Yeah.
But there's still, I think, more work that needs to be done to make sure that this stuff doesn't happen to our beautiful state parks.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you. And have you seen, like, I saw at Hope Sound, I mean, the golf courses they're developing out there's like 163 holes within a 10-mile radius. It's like, and those are, I mean, like 13 big name architects are doing those. They're going to be beautiful courses. I'm not a golf guy, but I think like we were talking about, this wealth that has moved here in general is, it's a tough debate because it creates transactions, and that's kind of what fuels a healthy economy. Is like these women and men that have moved here, they go out and they spend money at restaurants and at our malls and at our shops, and that puts pockets in or money in the server's pocket, and then they go out and they can. That's just kind of how it works. So,
do you think now is a good time to invest? If you're going to be like a first-time investor, maybe you own your own house, you saved up some money, you got your 401k kicking, you got your IRA, you got some other investments, and you're like, listen, I think now might be a good time to maybe buy a long-term rental or an Airbnb or a duplex or house hack or do something. Like, do you think now is a good time to invest?
Yes, I always think it is. That's kind of just my mindset in general. Is there's always a way to find a deal. Like, now I have friends that look at Zillow, and they might look at a property and say, like, well, this doesn't make sense. But it's important to pursue properties and negotiate and get to know people. I'll give you an example is how we bought our office. It was listed as a rental. I wanted to get to know the owner more, ask him to coffee, and learn about what's he looking for. And he was looking for passive income. So I could see, maybe, are you open to an owner financing deal? And he was a pretty sophisticated real estate mind himself, and he wanted to help me out. So I think it's important to, like, I don't know, keep moving the ball down the road and see how far you can get with deals, because you can make deals happen that make sense. It takes a little more legwork than just like scanning Zillow. But yeah, like you mentioned, house hacking, just underwriting house hacking deals in general, they typically can pan out, and they're a great way to learn and get into the investing for the first time.
Why do you say it's always a good time to invest?
Because I think there's a way to find deals always.
Yeah.
If you pursue them the right way. Like right now, my strategy, if I were buying a home, would be to reach out to a lot of owners and ask about owner financing. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, interest rates are at 6.5%. I can't afford it with this down payment, and I would maybe like see if they're open to making interest on their. I can reach your sales price. So I just think there's always a way to find deals. Yeah. Even in a tough market, I'll say like it's much tougher, but I think we also need to adjust our expectations of real estate in the first place. Like COVID broke our brains a little bit that like all these deals are supposed to like cash flow and we can flip them quickly. But historically, the people who did well in real estate in the 80s and 90s, they held it for a long time. Like it usually breaks even, or sometimes you might lose money when you start. But historically, real estate's not a get rich quick scheme. It's like a long-term play. You know what I mean?
Yep. I agree. I mean, unless you're trying to do the flip game, flipping investment properties,
Right.
but there's just a ton of risk there too. And I've seen a lot of investors lose their tail, like not understanding like the true cost of the work that needs to be done in the flip. But I agree. I mean, I think there's always a way to find a good deal to invest in, and it's never too late to not invest. And I think about one of my favorite authors. I think about one of my favorite authors, Tim Glover, which is like Michael Jordan's coach and Kobe's. Yeah. So I'm one of the best books of all time.
Yes.
But his famous quote is if you think the cost of winning is high, just wait until you get the bill of regret. And I love that. And I think we can apply that to like so many different things, including real estate investing, because it's like, I look at the deals that I've passed on over the years, and it's like, oh man, I really wish I wouldn't have passed on that deal, like looking back on it. And it's very rare, like in real estate, where you have regret about investing in real estate. It's very rare. If you get the right deal and you negotiate it right, the bill of regret that I think that a lot of people are going to have is like not buying their first property or not investing in real estate, just thinking that, hey, listen, I'm in my 20s. Let me just continue to rent. It's cheaper to rent. I can kind of move areas if I need to. I don't have the responsibility. But you get into your 30s and 40s, and all of a sudden, the houses that you're looking at that were 500, they're now $1 million. You're like, man, well, for the same price, if I could have bought that house for 500 and now it's worth $1 million, I could have had $500,000 in wealth creation over that time frame.
Right.
And you could be dealing with a lot of regret.
Right.
So when we read that quote, if you think the cost of winning is high, wait till you get the bill of regret. What comes to mind?
Yeah, a lot of the people that I met with selling those townhomes, like when what you're typically selling against is the path of least resistance or the option of doing nothing. You're not like selling against competition because it's hard to buy your first home. Like it's a lot of money.
Yep. It's
stressful. Moving is not fun. So getting people out of that, and if they're thinking like, I'm going to wait and see and, re-sign my lease, I would encourage them to run that math on like specifically what are you waiting for? Are you in 12 months, what are you expecting to be less? The purchase price or the interest rate? And where did that math come from? And just getting people to think in that way. But yeah, in the same sense, if you're not a renter, like a lot of times if you're thinking about moving, that's a great way to capture a lot of the equity, because like a home's a great investment. It is. But really it's an expense until you get the money, you get paid back from it. So sometimes moving's a great financial tool to capture all of the equity and the payments that you make to move up to that lifestyle that you and your family want or have dreamed of, instead of waiting.
And the tax benefits on that point, when you move, if you're a married couple, you're exempt up to $500,000 in cap gains. So it's tax-free money. You sell the property, it's tax-free. You roll it into the next property or use it to invest. It's a beautiful thing. I also think about that quote in the frame of like as a businessman about the cost of winning and being regretful. And when I think about that, like my one word for this year. So when we set our goals, I think we talked about this before. When I set my goals for the year, we try to boil it down to like one word for the team, and then for each individual team member personally, like what's your personal like one word? And like mine this year was like excellence. In regards to like being a businessman, like I want my kids to see me being excellent at what I do. I want them to like witness that. I don't want to be 6 years old and look back at my life and then like regret that. Like I want to show up every day. If I'm going to be spending time away from my family, working, like I want to show up big. Like I want to show up big for my team, for my clients, not waste time and like get it done.
Right.
So when I think about that quote, it really brings me back to that. It's like, man, I'm willing to pay the price today, so I don't have that bill of regret in the future.
100%.
What are your thoughts about that?
I mean, you're speaking my language. Like, it's the first thing I try to do when I'm working with someone is like, let's truly measure the opportunity cost of what happens if you don't make this decision. When are you going to make it? When are you going to do it? So I would say, I think that's just creating urgency for life, and it's great. I love it.
Yeah, I love it. I got to reread that book again. I read it twice. Let's also talk about the interest rates. Do you feel like that's going to have a big impact? Like, so rates are now finally starting to come down. We're in the mid 6s, government loans like closer to 6. They could go lower. Some analysts are saying they could go into the 5s next year. Who knows? Next year is kind of who knows what's going to happen with the election, what the administrations are going to do, that type of thing. But, rates could come down. Do you think that's going to start unlocking a lot of these people sitting on their properties with low rates?
Yeah, I'm optimistic about home sales in general, specifically new home sales. I'm more optimistic in than resale maybe. But yeah, I believe we had like a relatively slow quarter last quarter, and understandably so. I mean, with what's going on in the election, high interest rates, I think everyone I knew was like traveling. It seemed like. So I'm optimistic about what will happen. I think it will unlock a lot of people who have been waiting. I know a lot of people who have been.
There's a lot of people sitting on 2-3% loans that are just not willing to make the move to a 6 or a 7. They're just not willing to do it. Even though the people that have 2 and 3% loans, that means they probably bought like prior to like 2022 or 2021, and they probably have mad equity in their house. I mean, their homes that could have like doubled in value.
Yeah.
So, when I'm having client conversations, like those are the conversations, because they're weighing out, okay, well, I can unlock $500,000 or $1 million in equity in my house, but then I might have to go to a higher rate. So how do we get around that? Do we do rate buy downs? Do we put more money down? Like what does that look like? And from my experience, like people are just having a hard time bridging that gap. But I think if we can get rates into the 5s, or maybe get points, you can buy points, buy your rate down and get it into the 4s, the gap's going to be shortened. And I think you're going to have a lot of these people looking to move because they've been stuck in their houses. Like my house, my mortgage is 1.875. I'm in the business. I timed it kind of right.
Basically, literal free money.
I'm not going to be paying that loan off.
That's what I was thinking when the interest rates were at that. I was like, I felt like the best thing you could invest in at that time was debt. I mean, that was free money they were handing out for a while.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Back in the day.
I would wonder if, some back in the day, if some of those houses that we're talking about, if they'll cash flow as rentals, it could be a great way to keep that equity.
Yep.
If you wanted to get really aggressive, you could like use a HELOC, but I would be careful with getting to your next.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of accidental landlords, like people who didn't really want to be a landlord, but they're like, hey, well, my payment's $2,400 and I can rent it for $5,000. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I'll deal with the hassle of a tenant for that.
Because now you have an asset, right? Once the house starts paying you, then it's like a true asset.
Yep.
But
get the tax advantages, you get the write-offs, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Last thing I want to talk about was company culture, because when you and I met previously, we talked about this, and I really love that you have this stuff dialed in for your team and like your vision for your company, because I know we're aligned in that, because I have that for my team too. But tell me about your company culture and like, why is that important for your company?
Well, leadership, I think leadership and sales kind of go hand in hand. It's like leading someone to a destination that we both believe in. That would be leadership. If I'm doing something for just my gain and trying to get you to go somewhere, that's more manipulation, right? So we do that through, we're pretty open. Like when we have meetings and people make mistakes, we want to bring that to the table and make people feel comfortable for that. Like, I love talking about failures or deals gone wrong. And that's also a time to shine as a professional. Like, if you made a mistake, let's uncover that, and you're not going to get kicked off the team for that.
Yeah.
Like, the best teams I played on when I was an athlete were the ones that you could call someone out for not being accountable, and it could be fun or loving or whatever it is. Sometimes it's tough, but I'm not going to kick you off the team. You're not going to not be my friend. That's when it turns into poisonous, right?
Yeah.
Or if I take you to lunch and talk about him and we're not talking about what's going on openly, that's poison. So, yeah, we're an open culture, and it's been great what we've got going so far. Good group.
It's so important. I think of it like a team too, like a sports team. You know, and the culture of your team it's everything. It's like, are you willing to like go to war for your teammate? Are you willing to put it all on the table for them? And I think it's very similar in business.
Yeah.
And I've really focused on that too in the last 5 years, is being very intentional about the culture in the branch and with my team. And I found there's many things you can do to like build that. You know, one is we do this All About You form, where we have all of our team members fill this out. We do this for clients too, but where we know everything about them, like their favorite coffee, their birthday, their anniversary, their pets' names, like all this type of stuff. And so, you know, when we celebrate, we will celebrate it very specific to their interest. Like, for example, we have one of our closers, she works remote, awesome lady, but we have her All About You form. We know her dog's name. So we ended up getting like and she's a chef. And so we got all this like chef gear and like customized like dog stuff. And I mean, you would think we just handed her like a box full of diamonds or something, you know, like she's just so over the moon, like, wow, like you really took the time to celebrate something that's important to me. And, you know, those are just like little things. And then also, you know, just making sure that you have like very clear rules about your culture. You know, one of the things that we have is like, nobody's allowed to talk about somebody else unless you're building them up. It's funny because I say that to my kids too. Like, they'll talk about somebody like at school, and I'm like, are you building them up? No? Okay. Zip it. It's like,
that's great. So what do you say when someone's like, oh, I'm just venting?
You're not allowed.
Yeah.
You can't, we're not talking about people. The conversation has to end.
Yeah.
If you have a beef with that person, we're going to talk to them. I'll bring him in. I'll put him on the phone. We're going to deal with it.
Yeah.
You have to confront it. You can't let stuff like that linger. And it's been a process for me to learn that and to make sure that the people on our team are the right ones, that are not negative, that don't talk about other people. And it's been a process because I had to let people go over the years that just didn't fit that. And like, as we got the wrong people off the team and the right people on, everything changed.
Mm-hmm.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything. And I think like our team now, I mean, they would like do anything for anybody else on the team. And that's really the culture that you want, but it takes time and intentionality to really build that culture over time.
Well, those same people, I mean, they'll do that to your clients, you know?
That's right.
They'll be like, oh, so-and-so, she doesn't know what she wants, and she doesn't, and they talk bad about the clients, and then that trickles over into service.
Yep.
But I think you and I might know that it's just being more intentional with like the discovery and understanding of who you're working with.
Yep. And I love it, man. I love how you're a young guy. You got your head on straight, and you're building it right from the get-go. So I just mad respect for that.
I appreciate it. It's people like you and all the people in my life that I've been intentional about finding people who are smarter than me and just like asking them questions and being a sponge as much as I can.
Got to surround yourself with good people. That's it. I always tell the story. I was a wrestler growing up. I wrestled from like age 5 to like 18, and like in like high school, like, oh man, this kid would just whip my tail like every single day. I mean, it was really annoying.
Yeah.
But he was the state champion. Like he was like, but he would just kick my, like, just wipe me all over the mat every single day. I mean, I would never, ever, ever take him down. Like it was like nearly impossible. The guy was incredible. But eventually, like, I got a takedown or I got in a better position. Like eventually that happened, but like, it's like iron sharpens iron. Like, and then when I became like a sophomore, next thing you know, I'm going to states, and then junior, and then all of a sudden it's like I've been getting whooped by this guy, but he was the state champion. And so I was literally trained, like, but you didn't realize it at the time. But if you just stay with it, I was like, and the next thing you know, you're really good. But it's just being around other people that are going to sharpen you and make you better.
That's the key. I mean, that's where you get feedback, is like the times where you got whooped or the failure. I remember my first outing in college, I didn't finish the inning. Like my coach, it was an inter squad game. I gave up like 7 runs, and he's like, "McCain, you're good. Just drop." I was like, "Oh, okay." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, man, I should have gone to junior college or something." But if you can see that as critical feedback, if you can separate from the emotion after you get over it, and see like, okay, how do I learn? Go back to the drawing board and approach this without emotions, and you can get through it.
100%. Let me hit you with a few rapid fires, and we'll wrap up.
All right.
Favorite outdoor activity in the Treasure Coast?
I would say running, going to the beach, running at the beach.
What beach?
Juneau Beach.
Juneau? Okay.
Yeah. I used to do that every Sunday.
Favorite restaurant? South Florida.
Favorite restaurant? South Florida. I like the Cooper right over here.
Cooper?
Yeah, it's a good spot.
Good spot.
Yeah.
Favorite charity?
Excel mentoring. This guy Tom Rivera. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. So awesome. He's working with like kids from like 18 to 21 and just teaching them life skills. And I like it because, I mean, all charities are great. Obviously, they're doing great things, but Tom like shows up with some accountability and is like, it's not just like easy for these kids. He wants to teach them something, and he does a great job.
Nice. I love it. I got to check that out.
Yeah.
Favorite business book or podcast?
Wow. I got a lot. I don't know if this is a business book, but I would say Miracle Morning really changed my life. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I think, changes a lot of people's financial outlook. But those two were, hinges that swung a large door for me.
Nice. Love it. Lunch with one person, dead or alive?
One person, dead or alive. My dad was pretty awesome. It'd be cool to, have that person that's just like, tell you like, you're doing good, man. Like, and inject that confidence in you.
Nice. So. Cool. And last one, what are you most grateful for?
I'm most grateful for the opportunity to be here. I mean, how lucky are we to just like everything we're doing right now, this part of the country, this part of the state, and we live in a great time for how much we act like it's crazy. Like,
for sure, we live in probably the greatest time in history.
Right. Like day to day, what I'm actually doing and what my friends and family are doing is like amazing. They're spending time developing themselves and giving back to the world and working out. Like, it's not easy. It's complicated, but how could we not be grateful for it?
100%. Yeah. Love it. Well, I am grateful for you for coming in today. And like I said, just mad respect for what you're doing. And, I wish you all the best with Blue Edge and all the things that you're doing and building the team, and anything I can do to be a resource for you. I'm here for you.
Absolutely. Thank you, man.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Bye.